then it's time we start seeing clothes for what it is, which is a craft. Making clothes is a craft. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome if you're new. Welcome back if you're revenant. Please consider subscribing if you like everything and anything about secondhand fashion, chaotic styling, and yapping. For today's video, I want to talk about how we need to stop about the whole clothes are just a piece of fabric shtick. Simply because I do think that it's kind of problematic in a way to only see clothes like that, because it's completely erasing the whole, craftsmanship that there is behind. Not only that, but it's reinforcing that very Western colonial idea that because a lot of the clothes in today's society are made abroad and are made in the global majority, the work of the people over there, because they're not Westerners and they're not white, is less than. And also want to discuss about, if we want to push for more sustainable fashion, we need to rethink also the way we view clothes and we view our consumptions, because we cannot expect to keep consuming the same way we consume when we want a new system for a more environmental friendly and kinder and fairer system for people like in the production chain and the just the fashion world. And yes, I wanted to talk about that because I think it's so important that we stop seeing clothes as just something very disposable, even though it was pushed in onto us to see it as disposable. And that's the problem. That's the whole problem of fast fashion. And when we don't see value in the whole craft of making clothes, that's when then people start complaining about, like ethically made clothes to be too expensive, because, we are so used now to have cheap clothes, very quick, like reachable and all that, that people don't understand that maybe it's best to invest in a ethically sustainable made clothes than it is to just buy fast fashion, which you're going to have to buy to rebuy and rebuy every other month because it's not lasting. And just to consider that there's a lot of things going behind sustainable and ethical fashion. And I'm just really, really tired of hearing people saying that clothes are just a piece of fabric when it's not. And especially when we're talking about sustainable fashion, it's literally trying to make sure that the production is fair, the production is ethical, and it's good not only for the environment but for the workers as well, for a better future within fashion. For this first chapter, I want to talk about the dichotomy of this need to want sustainable fashion and to wear sustainable pieces, but to like expect that sustainable fashion garment to be like a fast fashion price. Because what actually brought up this whole discussion of clothes are not just a piece of fabric is because last week I was watching a YouTube video, like I always do, and this creator, she was invited to a showroom to a local brand, tried on a piece of clothing and decided not to like buy it, because even though that creator found that piece of clothing really nice, they just didn't understand why they had to buy that piece of clothing for like this high price. And they said verbatim that it was just a piece of fabric. And upon hearing that, I was just like, it's not just a piece of fabric. Like, that clothes that they tried on was not a piece of fabric. It's like a lot of work behind it, hours of work behind. And it then got me thinking about like the way we have been raised into viewing fashion is so problematic when we don't see fashion as an art anymore. You know, we see fashion as something that is just disposable. It's fun to play around with, but then like there's no consideration behind the garment, and it then got me thinking about the whole state of the fashion industry today, but also our relationship to that said fashion, and why we should stop thinking that sustainable fashion has to be, like fast fashion prices. And I understand the fact that, like fast fashion has gotten so big and so popular and so profitable that we are so used now to have like any piece of clothing for so cheap. And especially today with the rise of ultra fast fashion, where you can literally buy a couple of clothes for just a few pennies, like an item of garment for just a few pennies, is it's egregious when you think of it. It's a very, very egregious to know that you can actually buy clothing for such a cheap price. But because so many people are now used to that, and we live in a system where the cost of living, the past 2 decades alone, has risen up crazily, but our salaries haven't. So when the cost of living is getting more and more expensive, and people's salaries have not actually like caught up to that, because like exploitation is more important than actually making sure that people have a comfortable life, of course people are going to start viewing fast fashion prices as the norm, and especially ultra fast fashion as the norm. And if you can easily get like t-shirt on Pretty Little Thing for less than 1 quid, why would you pay like 30 quid for a t-shirt from a sustainable brand? And you know that's that way of thinking that is actually so problematic, because like we now in time where we are very aware of the environmental crisis that we are literally living under, and the fact that we need to slow down, we need a system change, we need to really remodel the whole society. And in order to do that, you know like the people at the top have to be willing to do that, but they just not, because profit is more important than human life. So they just don't care. Like I'm still thinking about, was it last year, like the summit, where all the like politicians, they like gather together to talk about climate change and world politics and all that. And it was in Scotland. Literally all the prime ministers and president headed there in private jets. And basically the goal was to talk about, like the environmental crisis. So just to like the kind of disconnect that they can have on being like, okay, we need to talk about climate change and why it is a problem, but they all flocking there in private jets and basically being the main issue. Like it's not secret that because we live in these horrendous times, and we still want to find ways to enjoy like little pleasures such as fashion. We want like a better future in fashion, but we want that better future to come with like the prices that the system has managed to come up with today. And there are so many things to take into account when we talk about fashion and sustainable fashion, and the need of having like a fairer fashion, a climate conscious fashion. And it all comes into really being aware of all the works that comes behind, and to just know that clothes are not just something that you find in the racks. It's like there was someone who like made them. We are all aware about fast fashion and its like horrible working conditions and just like all production. And we all have seen pictures. We see that it's literally actual people like behind a sewing machine sewing the clothes, you know? And it's just that because the workforce is now employed abroad in, you know, countries and region of the world where the West keeps destroying for they for its own profit. Because of that, those people are just paid a few dollars a day. I think it was like what, $3 a day. Some people in Bangladesh are paid for making fast fashion clothes. And even though we have pictures of those women and kids and men like literally sewing those clothes, people still don't see that as, you know, work, as craftsmanship. When, you know, the clothes, when they arrive in the stores, you know, they're all sewn in. So someone did that. And like the fact that the system that we live under has actually pushed us into not viewing fashion and clothes as an art, especially, you know, accessible fashion, you know, affordable fashion, because it's another thing with luxury fashion, where because luxury fashion loves to put the emphasis on, you know, the craft and being like, oh, because it's made in Italy, made in France, made in like Spain, that is going to be more expensive. Which, by the way, the laws in where a piece of clothing is made is very loose, meaning that, for example, like if a French high luxury brand decide to like create a piece of clothing, but they send it abroad for it to be, you know, made, and then that piece of clothing is just then sent back into France, and they need to like embroider something or just to sew in like buttons. The place where they can actually mark where it was made can be the last place the buttons were actually made, and then it can say, you know, made in France, when basically the bulk of the item was not made in France. It was made in, you know, the global majority, but then they sewed in the buttons in France. So now they can be like, it's made in France. And, you know, luxury fashion does not mean sustainable. Uh, a few days ago, like Buff magazine published that Armani and LVMH were under fire in Italy because it turns out that they are infringing the Italian labor laws, because it was found out that they were actually producing a lot of their clothes, which I don't know, they were talking about bags, but a lot of them goods, like they were producing a lot of them goods in illegal sweatshops. Yes. So, like, luxury fashion does not necessarily mean like best fashion, because they also do use the same process. And the whole goal of, you know, the fashion industry today within a capitalistic society is to make profit. So if they can cut corners somewhere, they're going to do it, you know. And they often do it. Like, technically luxury fashion, but mostly sustainable fashion is strongly emphasizing the need to have a more local production. So for example, in Europe, like all like the sustainable fashion brands that I know, they have a production here in Europe mostly. And if it's not in Europe, it's in North Africa, and they're quite transparent about them. And so because of that as well, you know, the what you pay, the cost of living is also higher. So what they're going to pay those workers is also going to be higher. And the whole goal is to make sure that sustainability means sustainability from the designing of the items to the finishing touches. So to make sure that everyone in the process is being treated and paid fairly. So of course it's going to come with a cost. It's either you decide you want to invest in a good item of clothing that is going to last you a long time, or you don't invest and you just buy the cheapest option, knowing that you might have to change it like in a few months' time because it's not going to be wearable anymore, you know? So it's the like that decision that is actually important. You know, like the production also in a sustainable slash luxurious fashion manner is also slower. Sustainable brands are mostly using like a small production system. You know, it's like they don't produce in bulk like a fast fashion brand will, but they produce like in a smaller quantity, some of them even in on demand. So because of that, when you produce in a smaller quantity, it's also going to be more expensive, you know, whereas when you produce in bulk, and that's why fast fashion loves to produce in bulk, but luxury fashion also produces in bulk, by the way. It's cheaper, you know, like you cut down the cost. But also, if we want the system to change, we need the production to change, you know, and we need a slower one. And I think it's important to see it as the way we view sustainable fashion is in a long lasting way, you know. um I mean, it's called sustainable for something, you know, compared to fast fashion. I'm not shitting on that creator, just so we be clear. It's just that I want people to understand that pieces of clothing are not just a simple piece of fabric. Like, it's whole hours of work behind it to like make, and it ask for a lot of skills that not everyone has. And I feel like that fashion in general is an art. We see fashion as a creative field, as an artistic field. So for me, it's always so weird that we do agree that fashion is art, but then we expect it to just be like devaluing art, you know? But people could actually easily explain why they would actually spend, you know, money for a high luxury brand, which does not necessarily mean that it is actually sustainable. But for an actual sustainable brand, suddenly it's a problem to like really invest in it because it's apparently just a piece of fabric when it's just not. For this second chapter, we're going to look at a sustainable fashion brand called Kernemilk. And I chose this brand because it's the brand that the creator was talking about. They say that they tried on a white dress from that brand. And like in general, when I discover a new sustainable brand, what I like to do is to go read the about page, because it tells everything about their ethos, but also the sustainability and also the production. So usually you get a good idea of the brand. The key elements to take into account to understand that why maybe this brand might be also more expensive than other brands. And I'm going to also quote some bits of the Fast Company article called "Why Are Sustainable Clothes So Expensive?", where they interviewed Daisy Christoffel, who is the social media manager at Remake, which is like a non-profit that is pushing for a fairer and more ethical fashion industry. Little interjection, because my froggy brain forgot to mention and credit Amandali McCarthy, who's also interviewed in the Fast Company article. She worked for 20 years within the fast fashion industry, and then she decided to quit to advocate for a more sustainable and ethical fashion. And she is also the founder and host of Clothes Horse, which is a podcast and a platform that I highly recommend you to go and check out. And I just love the girlie in general, because she has really kind of nice insight and, you know, nitty gritty information about like the behind the scenes of the fast fashion industry. And like the motto of her podcast is literally the podcast that loves clothes but hates capitalism, which is basically me. So when credit is due, here it is. That was my forgetfulness. So I'm sorry about that. Now let's continue. And Christopher actually gives really nice point explaining why sustainable fashion is at a highest price point element that is taken into account, and why fast fashion should not be taken into the whole norm, like should be seen as the norm. You know, we should not see fast fashion prices as the norm, and it should push for actually fairer conditions and a better prices in general. So the item of clothing that the creator was talking was the Evie dress. They tried a white dress from that brand, and that's the only white dress that they have. What I like to do is to go onto the article and to scroll until I found the description and to read, because basically you have like all the information that you need to know. And for example, here the description for the Evie dress: our Evie dress is a light jersey fabric. This dress has a tight fit with a deep neckline and extra long sleeves. It is made from a soft jersey fabric and has an outer logo label on the back. This dress is part of our scrap capsule collection, consisting only of leftovers fabric from our previous collections. And then it says that it's 79% cotton and 21% PL, which is polyester. Then there's an outer logo, a deep neckline, and then they even give you the care instruction, which I love. I think more people should really pay attention into how to take care of your clothes to have them last longer. Even if you buy fast fashion clothes, it's actually so important to really know how to take care of it so it lasts the longer. So here it says, to maintain the quality of this piece, we recommend to watch by 30 degrees Celsius. Do not tumble dry. Be aware of 3 to 5% shrinkage. So they do have a scrap capsule collection. Like, it would be like really nice to know what it is about. And like saying the fact that this item of clothing is made of leftover fabrics from a previous collection, which is already a really, really good point, because it means that they make sure that they like use as much of the fabrics that they have. Then what's actually really important to do, especially when they talk about the fact that they have this scrap capsule collection, is then to check you know, like what it means. So usually I go to the about page, and so here in the about page we have like first the about. So Kernemilk experimental universe stems from an inspiration rooted in the human body, which explores a sensual and luxurious approach to fashion. Founded by Mary Mock, the Copenhagen-based brand Kernemilk sets out the intention of creating playful and including apparel that have that one-of-a-kind look and feel. So, okay, nice. Born in our in-house atelier in a creative and collaborative environment, Kernemilk explores innovative design techniques, identifiable by our overlock and coverlock sewing style and an uncensored femininity. We design tailored garment for the modern person to wear and keep for many seasons. Sustainable development and growth is a central element in our design of collections, prioritizing slow organic advancement rather than radical transformation. It would be like interesting to understand what is radical transformation for them, but I feel like that we already know like kind of in outline what is Kernemilk and like how they view sustainability. And like Christopher even explains in the fact that so many people complains about fashion brands, sustainable fashion brands being like too expensive. And in the article it says Christopher likes to turn the question around and raise the possibility that perhaps it's not that ethical brands are so much more expensive, but rather than fast fashion has warped our sense of how much we should be paying for clothing. And she said, I quote, fast fashion brands have built incredibly damaging supply chains to get prices to be as low as they are. She says, they're exploiting workers and churning out more clothes than the planet can sustain. And so it's something that is kind of known nowadays, that fast fashion does not really care about, workers' security and even like fashion in general, because all they care is about, making clothes to make money and to have as much profit as they can. Whereas when you read like an ethical brand like Kernemilk, you can really tell you, like she said, that it stemmed from an inspiration rooted in the human body. I feel like that when it's really kind of like worded this way, you can see that, she's really thinking about how the human body is interacting, the relationship that human body has with the clothes, which explores a sensual and luxurious approach to fashion. So it's this idea that it's an experience, it's a whole experience. Like what she's creating, the item of clothing she's creating is for the human to experience it and to kind of, have special connection and relationship to it. So there's thoughts behind it. Like that's what I get from reading that. Then the sustainability section. Okay, so sustainability is a key element in our design and production strategies. We put a lot of effort into choosing high quality materials and designing timeless apparel that can be worn and styled in multiple ways through multiple seasons. We always work on developing and educating ourselves as a sustainable fashion brand and take various sustainable initiatives to ensure that we live up to our standards. Like this paragraph over here is already so like great in the wording and what they're saying. Like the fact that they're already talking about production strategies, meaning that they're actually rethinking the current production pace and system, and trying to have like an alternative to that. And the fact that they put a lot of effort into choosing high quality materials is so important. I'm gonna read a quote that actually explains that the material is the most expensive part of the whole like clothing journey, and people don't think much about that. And the reason why fast fashion brand gets to actually have such cheap clothing is because they always reduce the quality, and it's so important to understand that the quality of an item is also very much responsible for its longevity. And when someone is actually like putting effort, like they say here, into choosing high quality materials and designing timeless apparel that can be worn and styled in multiple ways through multiple seasons, there's clearly this intention of making sure that the way we design, so every seams and stuff like that has to be kind of thought through, so it is designed for the longest time. We don't talk much about materials in general, and I think it's so important that we do. And for example, for the fabrics, so Christopher says in the fabrics, no, it's not Christopher, but in the article it says that the quality of clothing has declined significantly over the past few decades as fast fashion has raced to the bottom to offer lower and lower prices. As a buyer for various fast fashion brands, McCarthy was regularly told to find a way to make a garment cheaper. Since fabric makes up so much of the cost of a garment, the quickest way to reduce the pricing was to reduce the quality and amount of fabric they used. And here, this quote over here, It literally just tells you that, and I quote, many sustainable brands opt for better, more durable fabrics, including natural fibers, but this is costly. Cotton costs 25% more than polyester, and if you buy certified organic cotton, which is less polluting to the planet, you're going to pay up to 30% more than traditionally farmed cotton. Cotton is one of the best and long-lasting material that you can use for your garment of clothing. And when I buy, item of clothing, I always make sure that there's a good chunk of cotton in it because it's just super long-lasting. And it's so important because, polyester is literally plastic. We've seen that the item of clothing, the dress, the Evie dress, it was like 79% cotton and 21% polyester. So there's clearly way more cotton that there is actually polyester. So it's literally telling you that it's actually going to be like better quality because it's not just made out of plastic. And here again in the sustainability tab of Kernemilk, they say, we apply a zero waste life cycle approach for our collections, including on-demand production, upcycling of sold clothing, and design samples to other sizes and styles to ensure minimum waste, which is so great because that's the thing. Fast fashion is very wasteful because like a lot of the clothes that they make, since they make in bulk, there's always so much that is left there because not everything is sold. So it's either, incinerated, which is really bad, or sent into, landfills in the global majority, which is also like really not good because we literally polluting the global majority with our crap. Excess fabric from collections are including in the design process to create new styles. Furthermore, we include 2 scrap collection a year, which are a one-of-a-kind garment made out of our fabric offcuts. We work with rental platforms, including Copenhagen-based Rentage, who holds a selection of current and previous collection to give more people the opportunity to wear Kernemilk. Okay, so here they literally let you know that the dress that we just saw before, which is the Evie dress, is part of this 2 scrap collection a year, which is a collection that they make out of garments, like out of fabrics of cuts. Also, the fact that they literally mentioning that they do work with rental platforms such as Copenhagen based Rentage is actually so great because basically it means that you don't necessarily need to commit for a forever piece. If you want another alternative, you can actually rent your item of clothing for like a couple of days, and then give it back. So it actually allows people to be able to wear the brand, which is actually so great. And I think it's also a great way to know, like doing this rental thing, to know if you want to commit into buying the clothes, if it's something that fits actually well, if it's you actually love the material, if I think it's actually a great way. And I think like rental is clothes rental is part of the future of fashion as well, especially in a society where there's way too many choices and we're trying to get away from like materialism, like having this need to always earn things, and kind of understanding that you don't necessarily to always own things. Sometimes you can actually just borrow it for a bit and then give it back. It's as also very good to do that. Renting is going to be like cheaper than buying, so I love that. It was also talking about the whole kind of on-demand production, that they include on-demand, since they apply a zero waste life cycle approach for the collection and stuff. The on-demand is actually a key element of the sustainable fashion realm. And here like on the article, the Fast Company article, it says under the volume chapter, this brings us to the final reason sustainable brands cost more. Most ethical, eco-friendly brands are working hard not to overproduce. Rather, they make just enough to meet demand. This means that this means they are making production in small quantities, which tend to be more expensive because factories offer discounts for bulk orders. It's a very telling of the new neoliberal capitalism that we live under, which is like infinite growth for like maximizing profit. And so if you buy in bulk, you get it for less. So it's, you know, it's more profitable for you to do that. So meaning that if you waste more, if you are more, the more wasteful you are, the more profitable it is for you. That's literally what it means. And then now the production, I love to actually read about the production because I feel like that, you know, when they give you elements of that, it's actually very important to, especially in a brand that is saying that they want to find alternative in the current production system. So, Kernemilk is built on the principles of creating a sustainable fashion brand. We work with a minimal waste and carbon footprint approach, starting from the design sampling process by using Claude 3D to have a business model integrates dead stock materials and producing garment based on demand. Okay, so Claude Set is a web-based collaboration and data asset management communication platform for virtual garment. So you can present your virtual sample to your customers and make online interactive critiques with them. Dynamics camera angle setting are available for animated presentation. Ho ho. Okay, so that's literally just a software that they use that allow like either like customers and other people in the process to interact and to give their opinion and feedbacks and stuff like that. To having a business model integrate that stock materials and producing garment based on demand. So again, like they do use dead stock. So like the dead stock usually is the like fabrics that was there, made there, but has not really been used. So it's like reusable fabrics that maybe another brand had ordered but not used completely. So that's what they do, and producing garment based on demand. So yeah, not overproducing. Kernemilk has two lines of production: cut, make, trim production in Romania, where Kernemilk source all fabrics primarily from dead stock materials, and full package production in Egypt, where the supplier sources fabric locally in Egypt, mainly working with 100% Egyptian organic cotton. Romania is like it's an Eastern European country, and so it's cheaper to make your clothes in Romania also than to make it in, for example, Portugal or Spain, because like the GDP in Eastern Europe is actually lower than in Southern Europe. So I think that's also the reason why, because we still live in a capitalistic society. So I feel like that, you know, like sustainable brand still has to make some compromises and still trying to still stay local because we're still within Europe, but still make sure that also they can like produce still in a like low price in a way, especially for sustainable brands. Like sustainable brands, they don't have much means, you know, that's the problem. So there's so many factors that you need to take into account, but at least they are open that they make the clothing partly in Europe and partly in North Africa. And then here they said, for accessories, we also strive to reduce our environmental impact. As for our new line of sunglasses made of 100% certified recycled plastic from food containers and plastic bottles, which is great. At least we're reusing the plastic. Plastic is not a great fabric, but we have so much plastic in this world that we at least need to reuse it in some way. So hopefully we get to reduce the amount of plastic literally littering the world. And furthermore, we work with our local production, Husted Venture, which is a social non-profit enterprise who creates jobs for people with reduced workabilities. They manufacture approximately 15% of our garment, focusing on our custom designed pieces and limited collection. It's nice to know that they're also working with like local productions. Um, and that production is actually also here to like give jobs to people who might find it harder to find it, like to get it because of some handicaps or whatever. So that's actually nice, and the fact that they say that they manufacture approximately 50% of our garment, that that's the type of transparency that I like. That would have been nice also if they could actually maybe give where in Romania they produce, in which warehouse. Same for Egypt, because there are actually many of them. So we can also trace back that. I love when some brands do that, but at least we already have like some type of transparency. And then we have like the Mary Mark bit, and then the community. Like again, like community is so important, and I love that here they do host some flea markets and sample sales, where they upcycle samples and sell out of their own wardrobe to furthermore like promote sustainable efforts among people. We found that our community support our initiative and participate whenever we want to host an event. I want to now finish with a quote from the Fast Company article, where basically, they say, the fact is, fast fashion brands are in the business of ripping you off. Buying slow fashion means getting an article of clothing that is well made and designed to look good on you. When you consider the cost per wear, you're actually getting a better deal from the sustainable brands. In this chapter, I want to talk about why I believe that not seeing the craftsmanship that is making clothes is problematic, because it's problematic in so many aspects. One of them that I see that is quite clear to me is the fact that it's devaluing the work of brown and black women, because in today's world a lot of the fashion is actually made abroad, and in the West is still very much thinking in colonial ways, where the lives of black and brown people are not seen as valuable and worthy, and Western comfort has to be to the forefront, like Western comfort and enjoyment, and we don't care if black and brown people are suffering, because anyways Western countries are making sure that those region of the world are suffering so they can keep extracting their resources and workforce for cheap. So it's very kind of problematic in that way, because it's craft. I always get so mad when I see fast fashion brand selling, for example, crochet work, because crochet, first of all, crochet is something that is handmade. You can't use machine to make crochet. So when I see some crochet pieces sold for outrageously low prices, it gets me so mad, because as a crocheter myself, I know the time that it took to make a piece of clothing. And in general, like as someone who's made like clothes herself, I just know like the time that it takes to just sew like knit and all of that. So seeing like how like little the prices are sometimes really pisses me off. There was actually a culture of fashion here in the West, and we are seeing it with the like fashion houses still there, and it's always kind of weird to me to see that we're still celebrating this type of fashion, but on the other hand we also not really celebrating fashion at all, because if it's high fashion it's great, but like if it's, you know, sustainable fashion or like standard fashion, we don't really care much. Like sustainable fashion, people are going to complain that it's too expensive, and regular fashion, it's just as long as it's cheap, people are happy. It's just so sad. Like sometimes I'm always wondering like who really decides what is high fashion and what is not. Like especially when you look at the global majority and you look at the, you know, traditional clothing, like which is full of colors and patterns, and there was actually history behind, and that is actually like high fashion. With the advancement of AI, of automation of everything, the goal is always to remove the human skill and try to kind of transfer it to a machine, so it's going to be quicker and cheaper, because the whole goal is to cut corners so it makes as much money as possible. So when you see that, it's just like, no guys, we really need to rethink fashion and rethink the system and to push for a change, because um I love fashion a lot and I see it as an art, and it needs to actually be seen as such and to be valued as such and to be recognized as such. And when you want to buy, you know, an item of clothing, like I said in my video, like rethinking sustainable fashion, um, it's so important to really take into account like a couple of factors and really knowing whether or not you want to invest, and to kind of, you know, see it as a, yeah, lifetime investment. It's going to last you the longest time, and the longest time, and there's actually more to it to just a piece of fabric. And when you see brands like Kernemilk trying to really live up to their standards and trying to really be as sustainable as they can, you know, it's brands like that that we need to uplift. We need to make this kind of brands the norm, you know, and not ultra fast fashion brands who sell you things for pennies. Like, but again, system change is a need. Okay, guys, so that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what are your thoughts in the comment section. If that's something that you also maybe struggle a bit with sustainable fashion, where it's something that you can't really jump into yet because it's too expensive, or you know, you share similar thoughts, I'd like to know about that. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, that helps me a lot. And share it around as well, you know, the more the merrier, and the more people also start questioning things, the better we can push for the system change. And I'll see you in my next video. Love always.